everyone doing? Good. In terms of the dates for each assignment to be turned in on Blackboard, I'll get that done by the end of the day. So there'll be no surprises on there, because I believe right now there are no turn-in dates for each module. So remember to do that. Any questions before we begin? All right, so last class we got an introduction talking about marketing communications, integrated marketing communications. What essentially we're saying is, hey, we can say the same thing through different mediums, but in a different way, right? We say the message should be consistent across all mediums or platforms that you'll use to communicate, whether that be text messaging, promotions, advertising, maybe it could be a billboard, maybe it could be some signage, emails, maybe you're on an app and start to get those banners, footers, things like that. But essentially, like, hey, you're saying the same stuff, maybe in a different way and in different mediums, right? Essentially, that's what the course is about. Like, well, simple enough. Well, not necessarily, right? Because there's a lot of messages out there. When we walk down the street or if we're driving, like, we see a ton of stuff. Don't mean we're interested in buying it at all, right? You have very few kind of selections that you have preferences for, right? So you have to think in terms of creating something crafty enough that fits people who are actually interested and placing money towards that. Now we want to understand what advertising is, right? We say it's not an advertising course, but it incorporates parts of advertising and promotion. Advertising is paid. Right? So advertisements that we will talk about doesn't involve mouth to mouth, person to person. Right? Hey, they get great pizza. We can't really measure it. Right? It's nice, it's free. You can kind of consider free advertisement. But what we're concerned about is things that we can actually measure, put money towards, and see the outcomes. You know, other examples I would say maybe that doesn't include advertisement would be like, hey, an actor or an actress went on like a talk show to like talk about the movie, right? That actor or actress is not getting paid to do that, right? It's a nice thing to do. Maybe at the beginning when they first signed on to the project, they may have agreed to like, you know, do that afterwards. I don't know, but those specific instances, they're not paid for that. So that's not essentially advertising. This is more sort of free publicity. What we call publicity. Publicity is free. Publicity is like, hey, I did something and that was all in the news. And everyone's talking about it. And I gain momentum, people are interested. Maybe they buy my product, right? Now they're interested. Now they want me on a podcast. Blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, that's wonderful. I paid money for it. Thanks for all the free stuff, right? But that's not essentially what advertising. So our focus is on things in which we're putting money towards and seeing how effective they are with the right messages, with the right customer, right? The right target customer. All right, we talked about lending tree, but I'm not sure if you all have mortgages and things like that. I'm pretty sure you don't. So maybe we talk about this. But here to talk about new product ideas can arise from frustration, right? Lenders and borrowers meet on one common website. So we could think about this in the principle perspective. Like, hey, in the old days, people had to physically go to a multitude of places to get quotes, to see what they're qualified for. Right now, people have to take off work, you know, you have to drive a lot of places, depending on locations of the places. So like, hey, it was kind of an inconvenience. And essentially, do we demand convenience? Yes, right? Human beings naturally have a proclivity for comfort and for convenience over primarily anything, right? Which means that you don't want the perfect answer, you just want the answer that's good enough right now. mortgages of lenders and borrowers, right? All the mortgage companies, banks, et cetera, placing them in one marketplace so that customers can show up. Now think about that too with other products. Back in the day, maybe your parents are old enough to remember, or your grandparents. You're like, hey, there are some products that we're selling. We're selling silverware, microwaves, toasters. Back in the day, there weren't really stores all over the place, right? So people had to go knock on the door. Hey, say something crafty, interesting, and get their attention before you get the door something. Hey, not interesting, right? That's why they call it the foot in the door phenomenon. The foot in the door is like literally, back in the day, salespeople would stick their foot in the door. Like, hey, wait a second before you slam it. And if you slam it, it's still not closed. Wait till I have my introduction, right? That's the foot in the door. So you're like, hey, you know what? That's a lot of work. One person, in person, face to face, that's the medium. That's not really advertising in some sense, right? Kind of is, but what we're concerned about is using the medium, right? Platform or something. Now we will talk about personal selling because it's still part of marketing, right? The personal selling aspect. You're like, hey, that's a lot of inconvenience. What happens after that? Well, a large group of investors and businesses trying to get smart about it. Like, hey, what if we put all the toasters and microwaves and silverware inside of stores? And what if we put a bunch of different stores, different brands, different products inside of a larger store? Then we have department stores. So now you're like, hey, for each of my needs of my life, whether it's stuff in my bedroom, my kitchen, my bathroom, et cetera, there's a place that I can go and these companies are competing to get my attention, to display, show value, et cetera, within one place, right? And this is, the evolution of marketing. Like, and so here we are with these phones, the laptops, the tablets, like, they're doing the same thing. They're kind of crowding around the same areas. Let's say Instagram is nothing more than just a mall, right? TikTok is nothing more than just a mall. We're all on it. We're all walking around, seeing what we like, disregarding what we don't, right? And maybe you want to open up a store, TikTok shop. No, you don't want to open up our own stores, right? And we're all kind of competing in that sense, right? To vie for attention. So think of that, like, it's about really making things more simpler to get people's attention and servicing their needs. Primary need is usually value. Whatever that means, could be convenience, could be price, could be quality, could be perception, luxury, right? All these things. Speaking of luxury, right? So we talk about these psychological phenomena that people get attracted to, right? You think in your brain you have neurons and they connect. And when they connect, you're like, aha, now I know how to play the piano. Aha, now I know how to ride a bike. I finally get it. How many times has it? 50 times. So that's why the consistency of message matters, because you're like, hey, I saw it once, that Nike ad was cool. But I got a phone call, and I got some text messages, some notification, blah, 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 I'm busy. I forgot it. So Nike's job is like, I know you forgot. So let me put it somewhere else, on another platform, another app, somewhere else, a billboard too, on the train, maybe somewhere in a mall or something. Nike's like, hey, I want you to see it the 7th time. So when the 7th time happened, like, can't buy those shoes. Right? The first time didn't get you. But that's how our brain works. Essentially, like, we forget everything. Right? You forget what I said. That's just how it works. Unless very stimulating to you for some reason, which means it's usually something that's like you already previously know. Oh, I know that is cool. I know that concept. Usually you say trauma involves it, but trauma could be whatever it is, good or bad, something like that happened to you that's relative to that. But something that spikes a And that's essentially the challenge. Repetition causes us to have an aha moment, and now we finally got it. We're gonna pay attention, we're gonna go buy the thing. But the message has to be consistent. But speaking of luxury, some like, hey, the phenomena of luxury. What is luxury? What's luxury? Could you tell me what luxury, what is luxurious? I think that's those are luxury shoes. Luxury product. Wow. What's luxury?
I think, at least for me, obviously it's different from person, I think it's harder to obtain.
All right, you say exclusivity. Okay, they only made 5 of those, right? That's why it costs a gazillion dollars. Only 5. Hey, we're rolling out the fall collection for these Gucci shoes. You already know those size 13s are gonna run out quick. I'm glad I caught one, right? I feel special amongst everybody. Glad I'm wearing what everybody else is. So exclusivity, is it anything else? When you think of luxury, why are people willing to pay so much for this concept of branded as luxury product?
For quality, but also the environment, it's unique, but also, durable and.
Yeah, you kind of like, hey, you know what? There is a difference in quality. Like, this one lasts longer. Right? There's an old saying, right? Poor man buys many times, rich man buys once. Right? Which means that the person with money may buy something of quality that'll last 20 years. Someone poor, maybe you gotta buy 20 times because it's cheaper the first time, same time. Then they're here, right? You spend more money buying a thing like that. All right, so quality, made in Italy, right? Whatever that is. We like 30%. But materials come from Italy, the rest came from Vietnam, Bangladesh, China. Anything else in terms of luxury? Yes.
I feel like it also kind of, people are interested in it because what it says about you, it shows that you're kind of able to live comfortably, considering where you're at, that you can afford that luxurious prestige item.
Yep. Hey, there's a hierarchy of kind of social interactions, right? We do have things like social class. It's a real thing. You know, there's places that you can't afford to go to and live. And maybe it's on purpose. Make sure that certain groups of people can't live there. Price you out. Cost us too much. Right? We want certain people with a certain maybe background, maybe a mindset. And these people think big, right? So yeah, you want to be seen as higher than the average person walking around the street. And get the attention from it, and it makes you maybe feel great about yourself. So maybe the last component is like, hey, luxury is about self-worth and self-esteem. Right? You want all that life has to offer at the highest level, because maybe in some way you feel that it's gonna make you grow even further beyond the normal person. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, to be honest, right? I think Steve Harvey said that when he was starting out on comedy, that he would still take first class flights on plane. You know, very expensive because I spent a lot of money on this, all of his money to do it. But he said the reason was that if he felt that if he kept that mindset of wanting to be first class, eventually he'd be a first class person all around. Right? As an entertainer, comedian. Yeah, it worked out. Right? I don't know if it works out for everybody that way, but it does maybe speak to your climb. You know, your growth pattern in life. Maybe you will get bumped up the car every few years to the point where finally kind of driving some luxury. All right, so primarily luxury is just perception at the end of the day, right? You can argue all of this stuff. First class flight ticket, we're all going to the same spot. Somebody paid $138 to fly to Miami. Somebody paid $6,000. We both get there in 3.5 hours, get off the plane, go talk to them. Right? That could be your outcome. Yeah, somebody put out is different. Kind of nice to be in. Anyone ever flown first class or business class? Should try it at least once. I'd say definitely it's worth it on long flights, like international flights, to be able to lay down, to actually lay down. I think that's the stretch out. All right, so yes, luxury. Luxury, like I said last time, is one of the greatest businesses to get in of all time. Because it's sleight of hand. It's like a magic trick. Right? Remember I say you could immediately create $5,000 pair of shoes. And you say, this is where I'm at. Right? Our company is about, there's a guy on Facebook, you've probably seen him before. He used to be a former NFL player, and he sells these workout regimens like CEOs. But basically, his thing is if you don't make over $1 billion, he can't work with you. Have you ever seen him? No. You guys have on Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat. But anyway, that's his thing. Like, hey, in order to even get into the program, you have to verify you make over $1 million, right? Hey, you think like that sounds stupid, but it may work in some degree, right? So once again, we say, hey, people like to only be surrounded by a certain group of people, and one may be based on socioeconomic status, right? This level of income. Like, you may not want to be around people making X amount of money. You only want the high rollers. Why? Because they got better networks. They can help you grow your business. They're going to know somebody who can help you out, and that kind of does make sense. Right? So luxury. Luxury is one of the greatest businesses to be in. All right. So we talked about communication, sender and receiver, right? Encoding, decoding. Difficult because we say sometimes they don't match, right? We have sensation, we have perception. Even if I say some words, I may say a particular word and I misinterpret it, or misperceive it in some way, and have to just lay it out there. Right? Blah, blah, blah. Like, well, you didn't frame that. Like, hey, framing kind of matters. You didn't set up the whole sentence structure. Anything. So we say, hey, communication can get tricky, and that's the real sort of thing when it comes to integrated marketing, right? Like, it has to be something to where most people are able to get it. So, keep it simple. Simplicity is good. We can all understand it. Great message. If half the class understood it, poor message. If nobody understood it, the worst message. Right? Keep it simple. Now, I did want to kind of have you get into your grooves and take one a little challenge. Right? Because we say, hey, same message, send in different ways, right? Through different mediums. Same message, keep it consistent, different ways. So what I would like for you to do right now is to think of a slogan, or a tagline, right, along with the slogan. And think of how many different ways could you say that thing, maybe that tagline. How many different ways could you say it in order to attract customers? So first thing is like, hey, think of a product, whatever it is. You say, hey, my idea is just as good, right? How could you say things like just do it in different ways? How could you say the same exact thing? Let's say you get a campaign, you're pushing out in all the different mediums. How could you achieve that? So yes, maybe think of a product. If you can't come up with a product, that's not necessarily the point. The point is trying to say the same thing in different ways. But if you come up with a product, great, you can share that with us as well too. Yes.
When you say it, you mean like literally like say it?
No, yeah, great point. So it doesn't have to be verbal. So you can think of the idea. Like, hey, here's another idea how I can communicate this message in a different way. So it could be a meme, it could be an advertisement, a commercial, it could be something, a setup, something on a billboard, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't always have to be just like verbally how you think about ideas, how you could kind of share the same idea in different ways. Make sense? Alright, I'll give you a few minutes with your groups, get into your groups, discuss it over, and let's see what you come up with. So at least try to come up with 3 ways.
You already mentioned that.
Sometimes when people are changing, just start changing their accents and you say it a different way. Yeah, like attractiveness. Yeah, maybe like different. I would say like that. Because how you say something is also a way of attracting customers. Yeah, I mean, what are some other things like different accent that you Yeah, like the hot celebrities. Yeah. Like the Chase hatchback. This is the car that I was rotating on the beach. Get out! And it's Kevin Hart, like the one woman's basketball player or something like that. Or like Shaq on the jet.
That's why I don't know.
Anyone struggling with ideas? I think it's kind of difficult, right?
Take it with another like,
then Red Bull gives you rings. It's usually something flies up and they go perky thing. But the point is, it doesn't matter. I think their thing maybe is to create like something that's interesting with the concept of wings. Okay, anything else? Okay, cool.
So we kind of stuck with Apple because we were a little conflicted about what to do. So we kind of kept the two words slogan that they have, which is like think different and like adding different adjectives onto the end. So like think bigger, reach further, like keep it short and sweet the way Apple has it, but making it a little different.
And so Apple's message is what ultimately?
To I think just expand technology. Like, what else can we do?
Yeah.
That's kind of their
Maybe like innovate,
yeah.
grow. So okay, so Apple uses kind of a play on two words, stuff like that, in order to express innovation in the mind. All right. Yeah.
So we had Disney, and their slogan is happiness place on earth, and like where dreams can go. So we thought of like how some ads are like families together, like just smiling and happy, or like another ad of like just like running and playing around. And then we also said a place for smiles to begin, or where laughter and joy is on.
Okay. So ultimately, what is Disney's message altogether?
I just like to be happy with Disney, it's like happy with Disney, making dreams on, just like that fun.
So Disney is consistent message of just like enjoyment, whatever. Ultimately, I think Disney is in the selling magic type of business, right? It's all about creating things to make you escape, I guess, maybe your life. In the back.
We kind of like, we didn't focus on any specific slogan.
Mhm.
We focused on more like who, what, and when. So like how you use it, when, who's saying it, and like what they're saying specifically. So for example, like new Gatorade ads that are going around, where all the athletes are saying like, oh, is it in you? You know, depending on who's saying it, you're gonna be like, oh, cool, that's cool. Or like Tom Brady's on Hurts commercial. No one knows why Tom Brady's in a Hurts commercial, but you'll remember it was Tom Brady saying it. So
Cash. Alright. So Gatorade uses very popular athletes in order to bless you. In order to gauge the product, right? Maybe there's no real true message about what Gatorade does because there's like a limitation maybe to what you guys just say about Gatorade, right? But the point is to use very popular people to remember, associate with Gatorade. And now they get the new mashups, right? And the Gatorade mashup. Okay. What about here?
We did America Runs on Dunkin', and we sort of started off with like a graphic design or something. You could take it literally and like there's like an American flag of coffee,
Mhm.
and then like someone like running, like they're running like coffee,
Mhm.
and then we started thinking in the sense of like advertisement. So like you could think of like an athlete literally drinking or literally running, and then they like go sip a cup of coffee. But then
Would you use an athlete or would you use an everyday person?
well, that's what we're gonna say next. Just like I feel like it's more of a nod towards like normal people, like it could be like a construction worker, a
Yeah.
lawyer, a nurse. They're just going about their day drinking their coffee.
Okay. So the every person, right?
Yeah.
Great. Hey, let me ask you, who drinks Dunkin' Donuts? Over Starbucks. Well, who's my Dunkin' Donuts? Who's my Starbucks? Half. Half and half. Well, it depends. It's like difference between cold and hot drinks for you. Or
Like, I think I like Dunkin' coffee better, but like Starbucks even like had like mix on like the refresher part, and like I like Starbucks breakfast tea much better.
yeah, I think Starbucks get better cold drinks than Dunkin', but I don't like Starbucks coffee anymore. I don't know. It just seems like it's between espresso shots. Like basically. in terms of Dunkin' Donuts, have you seen that Dunkin' stores have been putting locations inside the stores? What do you think that's all about in terms of like a marketing perspective?
Well, I feel like Connie's always a good idea for everybody. Like every time I'm in Target, you see like a company in there. Like I just feel like it's good for local businesses. Like, capital, you know, go out there and you guys go buy some more stuff.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
I think their locations are typically, or sometimes found like on someone's route to work, potentially, like on a commute. Like maybe they'll put it half a mile from the highway if someone's gonna be driving into Chicago every single day. And
Yeah.
they gotta make sure to put it on the correct side of the road so that way they don't have to do this huge U-turn or anything.
Yeah, okay, interesting. There's a way to like actually identify these locations, right? Maybe tell other people. Okay. All right, good. Next we got Chick-fil-A. Any Chick-fil-A people here? All right. So have you seen this? People outside with the, what is the purpose of this in terms of what Chick-fil-A is doing with this? And does it influence you in some way? Anyway, do you share this information and things? What do you think? Does this influence you in any way that Chick-fil-A uses this? And if so, you want to talk about it? Okay. So do you think this is an effective tool for Chick-fil-A to, to promote or grow a business, or you want to influence? Yes, sir.
I mean, I guess it depends on like the age range. Because when I see that, I think about Ronald McDonald, man. And McDonald's gimmick, how it like got the kids' attention. But like, as you get older, you realize like, you don't really care about it as much. You know?
Yeah, think about it. We oftentimes relate brands and companies to characters, right? So like Ronald McDonald, the Fry Guys, things like that. And so maybe Chick-fil-A is using this as a sense to create a character of a cow in the minds of the consumers, face to face. Yes.
I think it connects the consumer more to the company. It's like the same way that we associate Winnie the Pooh with the Poohs. Like everybody wants the Poohs, everybody wants Winnie the Pooh, and you can just go anywhere and everybody will be like, oh, I know him. You know, so it's
Yeah.
like,
So relatability.
Yeah.
Right? Relatability. Hey, the other part too is like, hey, you're not going there to buy something, sit in the car, you have to come to the driver. You're going there for an experience. And then if you have an experience, it makes what you pay feel even more like a value to you, right? Like it's more than just food, it's something else that has occurred that gives me some sort of experience, right? It all kind of builds the value. All right, we don't have to answer this, that one right there. All right, so we talked about some sort of communication, noise, things that could be in the way. Here they're talking about ignoring tweets on Twitter because they're relevant, being defended by the messages. So those are all noise that we talked about. We got the definition of INC last week. And we say, hey, here's all the components of promotion: advertising, digital marketing, social media, alternative marketing, database marketing, direct response, personal selling, sales promotion. But then we have our marketing plan, which will be kind of our major project here in the class, right? Our marketing plan is going to incorporate what we've been talking about. What are the consistent messages that you'll be conveying? Who's the target market you'll convey this to? What mediums are you using? Can you give us examples? Can you show us how you're going to go about doing it, right? So we want to understand just the basics and the fundamental steps of what a marketing plan is. Now some of you take a course of mine before, you've done marketing plans. Hopefully we don't do the same, something or remember what you've done. So come up with something new, right? Something a little bit more intricate, but a multitude of sort of methods of how you're going to go about it. All right, first steps: current situational analysis and SWOT analysis. What does SWOT stand for? right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? Current situational analysis, like, hey, here's an observation of the market. This is where the market is. This is how much funding we have for a campaign. These are how trends are changing. Something is occurring and changing. We have to act, right? We have to do something, being active in some way. And with the SWOT, we say, hey, what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? Maybe for us as a company, maybe there's a limitation in budget. Right? That could be a weakness. Strength, maybe we have a vast network already in place. Right? Opportunities, maybe there's new customers. Right? Teenagers are turning into young adults, and we have a section for young adults. Right? Great, that's a great opportunity. And threats, right? It could be competitors. Right? There's a lot of new people in the game that can be a potential threat. Next, you want to have your objectives. What are some marketing objectives that you could think of? Starting a company, you're trying to gain some business, make profit. What could be some objectives? Yes.
Like a specific percentage of revenue increase?
Okay, right? You're like, hey, revenue growth, right? Growth and revenue. Like, this is our objective. And if that's our objective, that other stuff scattered out there, we can't be too distracted by it, you know? So we're like, hey, we have to kind of get tunnel vision to say, focus on increase of revenue. How would you go about increasing revenue? Now, we say anything about increasing profit, right? Revenue is different than profit, right? You could have $1 trillion in revenue and still have $500 billion in losses, right? So if that's the objective, you're like, well, I want a ton of revenue. Why? It's gonna look good on paper. Even if it looks wonderful on paper, I might be able to go to banks, get more money, create more stores, do a franchise, and that all comes to just revenue. That's just growth. Right? That's a good objective to have. But it's not about profit. Profit can wait. If that's the objective. What are some other objectives? Yes.
Increase customer engagement.
All right, you say increase customer engagement. Like, hey, people shop here one time, and then we see that the customers never return. They're like one and done. How do we engage customers? Because the greatest thing they ever have is customer lifetime value. Tell me some products you have customer lifetime value with right now. That you've been buying their same stuff for like over 5 years for the growth. Yes.
I always buy Nike shoes.
How much money you give it in Nike? Right? Customer, you give Nike a lot more. What else? Yes.
Adidas.
Adidas? Yeah, Adidas. What else?
For me, it's like hair products.
Hmm?
Hair products.
Yeah. Like, is there a certain brand, a specific brand that you're like really into?
It's called Cake.
Okay. Okay. What else?
Just Amazon's a whole. That's a lot of it.
Right? And if you're paying for Prime, Amazon gets you for life, right? Until another Amazon. But I would say, hey, think of how much money you give an Apple at this point. Come on. How much money you give to Microsoft, Google? You got the laptop, you got the phone, you're gonna buy the new one, and the new one after that, new laptop, new tablet, right? Apple, Samsung, what have you, got you hooked. You've given them thousands of dollars, right? So Apple's doing great. They get great customer lifetime value. Some other brands, not so much. You only get one time, you never show that back every time, right? So customer engagement is wonderful because it leads to retention, right? It leads to this sense of I'm involved. Because ultimately, think of marketing as, like I said, it's like personal relationships. There's friends you've had forever. Why? Because you like them. There's people you know for a little bit. Why? They're okay. There's people you maybe met once, right? I don't like that person. Right? Very simple. goes when we talk about products and services. There's integrated. I like what they do. They may piss me off every once in a while, but not to the point that I want to leave the relationship, right? So one time I switched to Samsung and got a Galaxy, because I had always bought iPhone. And then I forget which iteration of the iPhone it was, but it pissed me off. Right? And I got Samsung, the Galaxy, and I realized like it's not an Android. It's like too much. Yes, you can do all this stuff, way more than that. True, very true. But to the point where I'm like, this is useless. This once again, this is a car that has the most gadgets of all time. Have it for a week and show everybody, brag about it. And if you realize that you drive the car for 3 months, Bluetooth, power seats, power windows, and that's about it. You realize that all the other stuff you already paid for it, and they're like, haha, we got you, and you extra wasted money for the stuff you will never, ever use in life, right? So that's how I kind of felt about Samsung. I'm like, too much, too complicated. Apple, I think, is, for me, I'm like, the sweet spot. Right? Of like simplicity versus utility. Right? So think about that too. Like, hey, for each product, there's not really a perfect product out there. But there's products that hit the sweet spot. Right? And think of us as a, when you start your companies or just think in general, like, hey, we want to hit the sweet spot. We don't want to be perfect. That shouldn't be the goal. The goal is to be the best outcome. Right? It's the best outcome. In terms of many things. All right. So those are objectives. And can you think of any other objectives? Anyone can think of anyone? Yes.
I was about to say, like, you kind of want to establish some type of social media presence.
Okay, you say, just build awareness.
Yeah.
Right? You like, hey, our thing is primarily awareness. So, $100 million a year to build awareness. We're not concerned about profit yet. We're not concerned about customer engagement yet. We just want to get the most views and that people know that we exist. Right? That could be important at a critical stage. Like, hey, we're just starting out. Awareness first. Forget all that other stuff. That comes later. Right? It's not the time for it. That could be the objective. All right, and then target market. Right? Target market is a particular group of individuals that have the demand for your products and services. Right? Nike's kind of in every person target market. That's why they're so big. Coca-Cola. Doesn't matter how old you are, right? Kind of, babies, children, but like, hey, it kind of spreads all around. But other products or services are kind of pinpointing target market. If you think of a company that has a very specific niche market, very specific. Think of a product. And it's a lot. Think of any product. Trillions of yes.
Off the top of my head, I don't know if you know about D-Box, the alcoholic drink.
The what?
D-Box is your alcoholic drink.
D-Box?
Yes.
What exactly kind of alcohol?
It's like a flavorful, like, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had it?
Huh?
Have you tried it?
Yeah.
It's good?
Yeah.
They got rid of some in the class, so.
What?
Yes. All right, but who's the target market?
Like 21-year-olds, people that drink and like party.
For like parties?
Yeah.
maybe they may in the future need to come up with new sort of tactic. Yeah, but think of anything, target market specific. Hey, do you need a wheelchair? No. There's companies that make wheelchairs for people who need a wheelchair, right? Target market, right? Need any other assistive devices? Do you need specific things? Whether you own a home, right? Like, hey, I don't need home insurance. Why? I don't own a home. Someone may say that. No. So there's specific target markets for people who have specific needs. So you can think of millions of sort of target markets. Now even further than that, you're like, hey, divide the pie. Right? That's the trick. Divide the pie. Here's the pie, here's the target market. How do we slice it up to even further segments of the market so that we can reach people within this category even better because they're kind of divided too. Could you give me some examples on, say, target segmentation, right? Or market segmentation? Like how you segment the same exact product into different sort of.
I would say like a Alola in their water bottles, and just the different versions they have, because now they have like ones for kids, they have it for babies, and for teens, and for adults.
Yeah, perfect example. You're like, hey, I sell water bottles. How creative could you get with that with marketing? Like, yeah, break it up. Cool stuff just for the kids, cool stuff just for the adolescents, and then cool stuff for the adults. Right? I would say sell the same product and have different sizes. 20 ounce, half a gallon. Right? But you keep dividing this thing with its own different sort of promotional activities. You gonna say something? Anyone else? Can you think of some other products who divide the pie really big and make a lot of money? Yes. Hmm? What's that? Nike? Oh, Netflix. Tell me, how does Netflix divide the pie? Hey, you're like, hey, Netflix divided by genre. Not every genre is free, right? They might do stuff just for teens, right? Might be stuff for people who like horror films. I'm big into horror films, right? And you think of some of the other app platforms. They have like they own smaller applications in terms of like just for horror, right? Just for just for action, things like that. Like there's one called Shudder. Anybody has Shudder? Shudder's just like literally all horror. But think of Apple. Once again, Apple dividing the pie, right? iPhone 16 mini, iPhone 16 Pro, iPhone 16 Pro, iPhone. So you're like, right? You're like, man, that's pretty clever. It's working, right? It's making you $1 trillion, and all you did was take away some features from one, add some features to another, and change the sizes, right? Whether it be how powerful it is, or camera capability, or another. All right, and then we talk about strategies, right? And strategies could be all different things that we use, and we'll discuss, and tactics, and then implementation and evaluation of performance. Right? This is important because we say, hey, if you want a job in marketing, this is the thinking you have to have. You can't just be a creative. You should be a creative, right? But if you want a job in advertising and marketing to some degree, you still have to be very systematic and analytical. You have to say, hey, this is the rollout, the strategies, the target market, the tactics we're going to use, and this is the implementation. And finally, these are the results. It did go up by 4% in sales, right? It did help customer engagement, right? In awareness. And we have the data to support it. So this is what separates like the scientific aspect of marketing, right? Of actually being a marketer. Like you're thinking kind of like a scientist, but a very creative scientist. Right? You still gotta have like observations of little micro activities that you do. Like you can see the tiny shift. Right? It starts here, goes there, then it blows up. But you see it when it first starts to happen. Right? don't see it when it's finally manifested to you over the thing you see. Oh, I start to see that people's behavior is shifting. They're buying a little bit more of this, buying a little bit more of that. And you should start paying attention to that now. You start to say, man, I'm starting to see more of that store. What's up with that? Right? And if you see maybe a little bit more of those stores, probably should invest in this. Like, I wonder if they have an IPO in public, so I could be the first, right? And then by the time everybody else invests, they'll be a big company. You're not gonna make that much money. It's kind of like Amazon. Rob that at the beginning, you're a billionaire. Why not? But you're worth tens of millions of dollars if you bought it like when you first started. Absolutely. Trends affecting marketing communications, right? Emphasis on accountability, measurable results, right? We say we need results. Mobile marketing, integration of media platforms, shift in channel power. Same channels don't have the same power. You all aren't watching television like this. Television, probably not the way to go for a lot of them. Still has some sort of power in some groups of individuals. Competition, things are being saturated. Focus on convenience, right? And attention spans. Our attention is getting worse and worse. It's making it more challenging to be good marketers. All right, and then what I just talked about, right? You say company leaders expect tangible outcomes led by CEOs, chief financial officers, and chief marketing officers. So agencies are expected to deliver results. Who here wants to work for an agency or actually be in advertising? What do you want to do again? Was it sports marketing? What do you want to do? Yeah.
I was working for an entertainment, other types of entertainment.
Okay. So we're thinking of the data-driven results, right? A lot of data is in these processes. Mobile marketing, pretty self-explanatory. Some things to consider. Hey, what are some of your best or worst mobile marketing experiences as a customer? In your opinion, which brands do the best job of reaching you with relevant messages where you are? So then talk about this with your group for a few minutes. Like, what's been some of your worst experiences in terms of being marketed to with your phone? Like, what has been some annoyances, right? What has maybe even really triggered you? And what has been some of the best brands or companies you can think of that has some excellent, relevant promotions that you actually gravitate to? So give it a couple minutes to talk.